So hitting that Outad clearly cost him dearly is a message I got, right?
Yeah.
So if we try and take that out of context, like completely, people wouldn't have a clue what that was about.
Yeah.
But of course, it's
referring to
Graham The Wig Whelan, and the fact that he's shown up as a VIP guest at the Erin McGregor wedding, this 1.5 million euro extravaganza that was held in County Tipperary recently. Now, when that individual says to me, hitting that Outad, go for it. Remind people.
I think we first, and we're going back into history, I think we first published a picture of Graham The Wig Whelan in 2010 when he had a chip up his nose. Do you remember?
A chip up his nose, yeah.
Yes,
I do.
That was the first picture of Graham The Wig Whelan. But he had obviously been in the papers back in the famous Holiday Inn drugs bust in 2001. He was, I think, just turned 18 by the time he was convicted. That Holiday Inn drugs bust,
the cocaine bust,
became, sparked the Crumlin Drimnagh feud, and Graham Whelan got out of prison after serving a 6-year sentence and became a very significant player in the Kinahan Cartel. But he was still a minority sport, would you say? He certainly appeared in the Sunday World in 2010 and a few other times, and possibly in the Star or the Herald. But he eventually, and I don't know the exact date, but he eventually became an international celebrity because he hit that Outad, as it's put to you.
Yeah.
Because, so I mean, if you think he'd been,
we should just explain for anybody listening from outside the country. Yeah. Outad is a real Dublin thing, is it?
Well, I don't know when. Certainly, I will probably now. Would I qualify as an Outad now? I don't know, but and it's an Outad is.
Not quite. You have a little bit to go. But it can be spelled either A-U-L, Outad, that's the Dublin way, I think, or A-U-L-D, and there's a hyphen at the beginning of it, right? And it just means old man.
Yeah. So,
and it's not a great thing to be said. For that to be said about you, that you hit an Outad.
No, it's not.
No.
But, presumably it happens in pubs across the country every day of the week, and the guy gets an L box. It's certainly not unheard of, but this rumour went around.
It became a worldwide media phenomenon.
And remains a worldwide media phenomenon to this day.
I never forget the amount of calls I took from America on this.
So what happened was, I think it was picked up by places like TMZ, which would be a monster site. I mean, one of the biggest news sites in the world focusing on showbiz. Basically, what was said was the Kinahan Cartel were coming to get Conor McGregor because he had punched an Outad who was linked to Graham The Wig Whelan, and that his life was in danger, and there'd been a bust up in a pub, and that they were coming to get him.
And there was real fear for Conor McGregor that they were coming to get him. Obviously outside Dublin, where everybody knew he was grand.
Yeah.
It was obviously a bit of a laugh. I'd say they were sort of... I think McGregor actually played up to it a little bit on his social media, didn't he?
I don't know. Yeah, he did. I mean, he did play up to it. But there was these sort of frantic voice messages going around as well, wasn't there? And they were being exchanged, which everybody gets them on WhatsApp. But they were making their way ultimately into the American media, and who were transcribing these voice messages. Oh, they're going to get him now. And,
That's the end of McGregor and everything. But of course, McGregor and Graham The Wig Whelan are sort of childhood friends. They grew up together.
Yeah.
And
because you have to remember that Graham The Wig Whelan was, he's obviously associated with the Kinahan Cartel, but really it's the Byrne organised crime group, or his core group, in particular the David and Liam Byrne, the brothers. I mean, they were absolutely childhood friends. And David Byrne would have been friendly with Conor McGregor. They would have fought in the same boxing club as they grew up. They would have had a long-term association. And that there was I don't think there was ever any belief that
there was never anything other than amusement, I think, in the McGregor stroke cartel circles, that this sort of situation was being blown out of all proportion by the international media, while Ireland remained calm. And we pointed out that, these guys they grew up together, they know one another. Okay, McGregor's gone one way in life, and members of the Kinahan Cartel, including Graham The Wig Whelan, have gone another way in life. But, they still can't deny that they know each other. And McGregor showed up at a funeral, a number of funerals that would have been also linked to the Kinahan organisation, to murders, funerals of murder victims. That
he would
it was
have
all
been
kind of before he hit the really big time.
Yeah, he would have been very good friends with Jamie Kavanagh, a professional boxer. He probably, I think, even more than the Burns or anything, Conor McGregor would have really known Jamie Kavanagh well. Jamie Kavanagh was absolutely no involvement in crime, but his own father, Gerard Hatchett Kavanagh, as well as his uncle, were both killed. Initially, it wasn't clear who had killed them, but there's no doubt about it in the passage of time that their murders were ordered or at least sanctioned by Daniel Kinahan.
The Wig Whelan went missing in about 2010 or thereabouts, or am I right in that year when the gangland legislation sort of started to come in?
No, it was later on.
2015?
Something pre-feud anyway. There was a gap in between ahead of the feud where he'd really, I suppose, set up his own network in Dublin, had become one of the primary suppliers of drugs in the area, and under the anti-gangland legislation, the police were trying to maybe bring what would have been regarded as a test case then about directing a criminal organisation, or so we were told anyway, and so we believe that they tried to build this kind of portfolio, and now it's quite common, and we've seen loads of these charges brought in the last year or so. But certainly at that stage, they hadn't been brought. And sometime as that investigation went along, Graham Whelan relocated to Birmingham, right into the basically to work with Bomber, but outside.
Yeah, in the heart of that organisation. And I mean, you hear different stories about his significance within that organisation, but a lot of people fell foul of Bomber Kavanagh. He was a very violent individual. He's currently serving 21 years in prison and facing further trial on a gun plot. But Whelan, nonetheless, stayed in Birmingham for quite a significant period of time, kept his head down, didn't hear much from him. And when he did come home, he set up a company back in Dublin about 2017, 2018, something to do with bins or waste. But he was being quite quiet enough.
Yeah.
There was little sort of going on. Now, he was subsequently arrested in another hotel room. This time he was charged in relation to money laundering. But he suffered a personal tragedy also. His partner, the mother of his 3 young children, died very tragically. And that happened, I think, just before he went to prison on the money laundering charges, because during his sentence hearing, it was heard that he was the primary carer for those 3 children.
Yeah, I mean, he was caught with an amount of money and a Rolex and certain other a tick list, but it wasn't it wasn't a huge amount of money nonetheless. And he was CAB also took money off him. But after that, he went to prison for, I think it was an 18-month sentence. He served, 3/4 of it or whatever it normally is. And since he came out, he hasn't come to criminal attention anyway of the police. But he obviously became... I think
when he was in there, was Aoife McGregor not visiting him?
Well, she was visiting him because people had... Aoife McGregor obviously be Conor's sister. And the word on the street became that she was in a relationship with Graham The Wig Whelan. While he was in prison, she continued to visit him. And since his release, we haven't certainly heard from him in regards to criminality. He's popped up in the other context, which is a better context to be in the Sunday World, looking tanned, teeth are looking whiter than ever.
Very, very, very white.
And he's
knocking around at the McGregors. He's been up in the Black Forge pub. He's been photographed with McGregor before. He's certainly, the relationship with his McGregor sister Aoife seems to be going strong. She was one of the bridesmaids for Aaron at the Cashel Palace Hotel, and he was photographed in the crowd right up beside Conor.
Yeah. And do you know what the comments mostly were on Facebook?
What?
Well, why don't you leave him alone?
Yeah.
And do they have a point, do you think?
Listen, the media is a fickle animal. And of course, you leave him alone and you get fed up, because what'll happen is, and I'll give him a bit of advice. I'm going to give Graham the Wig Whelan a little bit of sound press relations advice, okay? And this would be it. Just get into whatever goddamn photograph you want, because they'll get bored.
Yeah.
And when there's loads of photographs of you with the McGregors, with Conor McGregor and with Aoife McGregor and everybody else, all of a sudden you're not going to make it into the media at all, because there's so many of them that they become, you know, a useless commodity.
Well, I think
that's my advice.
Yeah, and of course, if you know,
now the problem is hanging around with the McGregors at all, given that they're probably the biggest photographed media family in the
this
world.
Country. Well, I mean, is Conor McGregor? He's up there in the amongst the most famous people in the world.
Yeah.
I mean,
his image must be used how many times a day?
Well, you
just media.
If you, and anybody can do this, if you go to Google News and you reduce it to the last 24 hours and you put in Conor McGregor, there will be 100 stories.
Yeah.
Now, if you did the same for Bono, there might be 3 or 4.
Yeah,
you know, like you're talking about a whole other scale of famous than even somebody like Bono.
Yeah.
So,
and he's so colourful, really, and you know, he photographs well. And you might not like him or whatever.
No.
I'm not a massive fan myself, but you know, the photographs they're to look at. They're, you know, he's on a yacht. There's blue seas and blue skies. He wears crazy clothes.
Yeah.
They spend an enormous amount of money. We do want to look at this. So,
and of course he does court all sorts of publicity. You know, so I mean, look.
So Graham the Wig Whelan, you know, getting a photograph with McGregor, it's going to be used. But also there will at some point be so many of them that they'll all look the same and nobody will be interested in you anymore. But maybe, you know, if he didn't want to be photographed or in the media, maybe he wouldn't be sitting right beside him at a wedding. Which
is, in fairness to him, it was taken from a distance by an American photo agency.
But there's also the photographs for the wedding have been sold.
Yeah. They were sold,
People magazine.
Yeah, exactly. Look, so, I mean, I think there is a fair
so
point.
So he'll be in those.
Exactly. And look, you know, people certainly, you want people who get involved in criminality to have a chance to start a new life, and that's to be encouraged. But look, like anything, if once you get yourself in the public eye, and the reason, of course, he is in the public eye is because of his criminality.
Look, the Wig is a colourful enough character himself, and he certainly gives plenty of quotes whenever he's either, usually when he's arrested. Actually, Mr. Justice Tony Hunt at the Special Criminal Court noted some of the comments that he made to Gardaí when he was arrested that time for money laundering. And the judge read out that he kept telling them that he got the cash from up his...
It's what?
Will you say it?
Up his Swiss roll.
Yeah.
What do you think he meant by that, Nicola?
And that they could keep it.
He also said, Google me, you know who I am, Google me, you'll find out I'm a dangerous criminal or something along those lines.
Yeah, so look, you know, he likes a little bit of publicity. But, you know, he has had tragedy in his life. And I think his pal, Philip Griffiths, who was also caught with him that time initially in the Holiday Inn, he also died tragically around the same time as his partner died tragically. So, you know, it hasn't all been
No, and of course, obviously, the other person that was there was Declan Gavin, who died, who was stabbed to death by Brian Rattigan, who spent a huge amount of time in prison for that. So there's, if you consider all the other people, some of the witnesses, the people involved in that whole drugs bust, how many of them are still alive? It's quite shocking, really, when you consider they're still all should be in their mid-40s. And
well, the Wig is enjoying life for all of them. You know, and I'm sure he had a great day out at the wedding.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Niall.
Okay, thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.